This episode of the Storyteller Show podcast is brought to you by Harney and Sons Fine Teas, a perfect companion to every story. Whether you're reading, writing, or just enjoying a quiet moment to yourself, Harney and Sons offers a beautiful selection of teas to elevate this experience. From classic blends to unique finds, every cup is crafted with care, just like the stories we love to share. Shop harney.com/discount/storyteller, and Storyteller is in all caps. Now let's get back to the show.
Welcome back to the Storyteller Shelf, Storytellers. Today we are thrilled to be joined by Janna. She is a powerhouse in the world of children's publishing and storytelling. She's the founder of Kids Comics Unite, a dynamic online community for kids and YA graphic novel creators. She's the founder of her own literary agency and a passionate advocate for creator support and experimentation in today's publishing landscape. Janna, we are so excited to have you here today. What brought you into children's publishing?
Where to start? I don't know whether I should start with me being like 3 or 4 years old or I mean, definitely I'm a bookworm. I've been a bookworm my entire life. Going back to when I first learned to read, I've always loved books, and I think I honestly always wanted to work somehow in the world of books, although it did take me until I was in my late 20s to move to New York and actually get a job in the publishing industry. You can ask me about my path. I'm not really sure where I should delve into details. I mean, I can say, like many people, Frog and Toad was a huge book series for me. I still remember how much I loved reading those books and just reading them over and over and over again. And I think when I was about 5, I made my own book called The Boy and His Forg. I misspelled the word frog. And I still think about that. Like, why did I write a story about a boy? I feel like psychoanalytically, that's quite interesting. Yeah, I think most creative people imitate. You imitate the things that you love, and that's how we eventually learn. I've always made books. I made that many books when I was a kid, and then in high school, I feel really lucky because my high school had a graphic arts class that I took 2 semesters or maybe even 2 years in high school. I loved it so much. I would have taken it as much as I could, but basically it was located in the basement of the high school, and back then they actually still had a printing press. So it was a physical printing press that we had in the basement of the high school. And we made practical things. Like I think we made the directory for the school that included all the families, like contact information. But of course, we also made our own projects. And I remember making comics with my friends in that class. And I still have them, honestly. I have some copies upstairs. Yeah.
That is so amazing. This is probably the best high school story we've heard so far.
Yeah, genuinely, I feel very blessed that I had that opportunity because nowadays, nobody uses mechanical printing presses anymore. Yeah, I also remember that they had the thing. I don't know what the machine is called, but the machine that slices through the paper. Like when you run off the big sheets and you have to fold it and then cut it to form into the booklets, and that thing is so lethal. It can slice through a stack of paper like this. So it was so dangerous, and I cannot believe that they let us in, like, age 14 or 15 using these machines. That was back in, the late '80s. That's what we did.
Yeah, I guess nowadays that probably wouldn't happen, but back
No, it wouldn't happen.
they were confident in you and your ability.
No, we were Generation X. Nobody cared about us.
And hey, it's all part of the story though, right? Look at where you are now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, let's kind of go backwards a little bit.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about your time at Scholastic and how you got there and how you helped launch Graphix.
Okay. I can tell the story of how I got my job at Scholastic because I think it's a good story for people to hear because there's elements of it that are very helpful for anybody trying to break into a job. So I like to say that I got my job through a game of telephone. And what I mean by that is basically I went through a series of informational interviews where I would just contact somebody and say, like, I'm interested in learning more about what you do in your job, and can I come and talk to you? No pressure. And then I would talk to them for maybe half an hour. And then at the end say, is there anybody else you think I should talk to? And then they would give me a name. So then I would go talk to that person. It did take me 6 months of like steadily looking for a job in New York to get my first job in publishing. And the way that I got my very first contact for that game of telephone, I literally knew nobody in New York or publishing except one person, but that one person happened to be an amazing person to know. So going backwards just a little bit, I was in grad school before I went to New York to try to find a job in publishing. I was in grad school for European history, and I was doing a thesis project about artists who defected from the Soviet Union to the United States during the Cold War. One of the artists that I talked to was Peter Cease, who's a very well-known children's book, picture book creator, amazing artist. And I interviewed him for this master's thesis paper that I wrote. And a couple years later, when I was planning this move to New York, he was the only person I knew. But like, what an amazing person to know, right? So I remember calling him on the phone. I was practically like shaking because I was so nervous to talk to him and ask, like, well, do you remember me? You talked to me a couple years ago, and I'm moving to New York, and I really would love to get a job in children's book publishing. And of course, he was so nice. He's like, yes, come to my studio in Soho. So I went to his studio. I still remember walking up the little steps, and then he had this long, narrow room that had all the flat files and all the work on the wall. It was so exciting. And I chatted with him, and then he gave me the names of like his editor and this other person I should talk to. And then that's what started the whole ball rolling. And then eventually, the way I got my job at Scholastic is that through that chain of telephone, I ended up talking to Arthur Levine, who is the editor who was the person responsible for bringing Harry Potter to the United States. And I had such a fantastic time talking to Arthur because Arthur is a total nerd like I am. We were going really in depth into like this person who we admired and that person and this book that made a huge difference for our lives. And I guess he had a fun time talking to me because a little while after I spoke to him, I think what happened is he emailed me and said, there's a job opening with the creative director, and I passed your name to him. So why don't you send in your resume, which I did. And then I ended up talking to that person who was David Saylor, who's now the publisher, I believe. Well, he's the publisher of Graphix for sure. But I was his assistant he was the creative director at that time.
Wow, this is amazing. This is exactly why we need to have conversations with people like you because publishing is so competitive, and I think it has always been that way. And it just keeps getting more competitive every year. And I know for me, like I used to be so shy, I could not even speak to people. Um, I had like a career change from science to publishing, and it was so intimidating at first to learn how to talk to people. But something that I found out, and I didn't come up with it by myself, right? It already existed, but really Penguin Random House gave me the tools to become a little more extroverted and to approach people and say like what Janna did. Can I talk to you? I just want to learn. Let's have a conversation. And I actually love that way better than others because it's like a micro adventure mindset, right? Where you're going in to really just be mindful and talk to someone. And when you say no pressure, you think you're saying it to say no pressure to them. No pressure, you don't have to find me a job. But really, I think you end up reverse psychologying yourself. And you're like, oh, wait, no pressure. And you end up kind of presenting your best, most curious self. And you might impress that person, whether or not they have some power to help you out anywhere, but they might not forget you, right? And you can at least make a friend. I love that you play telephone and all these connections came out of the web and you just met great people who were excited and probably very impressed by everything that you did.
I do think that being led by your curiosity, it opens so many doors. I think we can psych ourselves out in our head in many ways that are not helpful, but just like trying to lean more towards curiosity than nervousness or anxiety.
You said it best. That's exactly it. And It's one of those atomic habits if it doesn't come to you naturally, where you have to really cultivate it. But I do talk once in a while to some people who want to get into publishing, and I'm not like a mid-level worker. I'm just really regular, I feel, and I say the same thing. I'm like, "You have to have conversations, maybe not with me. I'm here and I'm happy to talk to you, but let's find you, like, people to just be curious with, to chat with." Again, no pressure. This is so fun. So you knew just the right amount of people. It could be 2 people, right? It doesn't have to be 10.
Oh, well, seriously, it started with one person for me.
That's incredible. Okay, so let's talk then about your journey at Scholastic and how that evolved over time.
Okay, where do I start again with that? Well, when I started working with David, I was doing all those typical things that an assistant does. So, going through his mail and organizing his calendar and doing all the little grunt work things that need to get done. But David's an awesome person. I really enjoyed working with him. I still remember, and I think I've written about this in a blog somewhere, but one of my tasks was to walk downstairs once a month for the portfolio review day. So I would like get the artist portfolios and bring it up to our area in the building, and then we would just go through the portfolios, and if it was somebody that whose work we were interested in, we would keep their postcard or maybe even ask them to come in for a conversation. Again, something which doesn't happen as much anymore, because of COVID changed things, but also everything went digital. So it's not, no longer do artists drop their portfolios off physically at the publishing houses. But yeah, it's just amazing. It makes me feel really old, but so many things have changed. It's truly, truly crazy. In terms of, I guess I should say, how graphics started, I've often written and talked about this as well, that the book that really changed my life was Blankets by Craig Thompson. And the way I found it was actually just sitting at my cubicle at Scholastic, reading Publishers Weekly, and just skimming through the reviews. And there was a review for a graphic novel, um, called Blankets. And it just sounded really intriguing. So I decided to go to the bookstore and get a copy. And I did. And whoa, it just knocked my socks off. And my first reaction really was like, what the heck? This format is such an amazing format for storytelling. Why aren't there comics for kids? This just seems crazy to me because it really is a different form of storytelling than prose. And it's different than a picture book as well. So I talked to David about it and he agreed with me. And the more we batted ideas around, the more we thought, like, maybe this isn't such a crazy idea. Why don't we talk to the publisher? And then at that time, her name was Jean Feiwell. And so we ended up, I don't remember the details, but we talked to her. And then she told us to write a memo, basically proposing formally that we start an imprint focused on graphic novels for kids. And together we wrote it all up. And I don't remember at what point, but another editor named Sheila Keenan ended up coming on board. So it was really the three of us who founded Graphix. Sheila was more senior than me and an amazing editor. So, and she had loved comics her whole life as well. So I feel like between the three of us, it was just a really amazing, amazing dream team. And then we brought in these super incredible creators, Raina Telgemeier, Jeff Smith, Kazuki Buishi. They were all among the first creators who were signed by Scholastic.
This is so exciting. And Janna, you've found a lot of things, and we're really excited to kind of take this journey with you on all these things that you did. We would love it if you could talk a little bit more about why you built Kids Group.
In a way, I will say there was a selfish reason to it, um, which is in 2019 when I finally decided that I was going to become an agent. So this was like really taking a leap into something I'd never done before. And I definitely had to build my courage to do that. I had actually been out of the industry for quite a long time. So basically, I started in publishing and I worked in publishing for about 9 years. And then I left completely and I did something completely different for almost the same amount of time, maybe 8 years or so, and then decided to come back. So I felt like I needed a way to put myself back into the thick of things. And it just occurred to me, why don't I start a meetup? And I'll just, invite people to come to the meetup and we'll meet at a bar and I'll just, you know, hang out with people. So that is actually how it really started. It started as a meetup in a cafe. We met for the first time in December of 2019 and the second time in February of 2020. And then March of 2020 is when the lockdown happened for the pandemic. And around that, between the December and the February event, I had found out about a platform called Mighty Networks, which is kind of similar to Discord or Circle. I believe Discord, well, I know for sure Circle, which is another community platform, didn't exist when I started Kids Comics Unite. I think Discord might have been around, but maybe not. I'm not sure. At any rate, I didn't know about it. So this was the only thing somehow I ran across it online. And I was like, oh my God, I could create my own online community and it's not on Facebook? Yes, sign me up because I do not like Facebook. Well, that is a whole separate conversation, but don't get me started. Anyway, so I started this community and I invited the people who had come to these meetups. So really, it started with like 30 people. It was just really small. And also, it evolved quite a bit because originally I was thinking, it's mainly going to be editors and agents. And, if creators want to come, of course, let's all get together and just hang out and talk about kids' comics and how can we make it better. But once the pandemic happened, a lot of things shifted and I changed it to really focus on creators. So there are editors and agents who are members of KCU, but far and away, most of the people involved and the most active members are creators, authors, and illustrators.
I think it's fantastic that you struck out on your own. We're kind of in the same boat with that. And it's inspiring, really. It truly is. But for those that are unfamiliar, can you describe what Kids Comics Unite is and who it's for?
So what is it? It is an online community that also includes courses. So we teach courses. Well, we've gone back and forth between once a year, twice a year, something like that. And we also run a competition called Pitch Fest that happens once a year for unpublished graphic novel pitches. And that is a juried competition. So we bring in agents and editors who are basically voting on the submissions and choosing the winners. And then we have a studio program, which is our paid membership program, where we run workshops once a month, bringing in all different kinds of speakers, everybody from creators to other agents to editors, marketing people, librarians, like anybody who's involved in the field who's going to teach on a very specific topic that is relevant to graphic novelists. I feel like I'm leaving something out, but that's basically what it is.
Wow, that's fantastic. And there's a lot to unpack there. The fact that there's just so many like avenues and the fact that you have workshops, I think we as writers, authors, we can definitely appreciate and need more of that. It helps us to be better at our craft. Um, and you now have, from my understanding, 2,000 members from 60 plus countries. Is that correct?
Well, I feel like it's still a work in progress, honestly. um, what has it been like? I mean, it's been amazingly rewarding because I've made a ton of friends. Honestly, I feel like some of my closest friends now I've met through this community that I started, which is kind of blows my mind. But honestly, I talk to them all the time. So, wow, I recommend it to anybody. If you want to make your own social media platform, I kind of feel like that's what it is. I think, yeah, it's just been a great place for me to make friends. And then the other gratifying thing is seeing other people making friends. So one of the things I do in the community for the studio members, about once or twice a year, I curate critique groups. So I have a form people fill out and they can tell me about the genre they focus on, the age level, how much experience they have in the industry, where they're located, many, many things about themselves. And then I go through each entry and I try to put together people that I feel might really work well together. And usually it's like 3 to 5 people. So they're very small critique groups. And I give a little guidance about how to build momentum as a critique group. And um, it doesn't always work, but it has worked often enough so that I know there's people that I put together, 3 years ago who are still meeting every single week. So, like, yeah, that's just amazing.
We as creatives, we often find it can be hard to find the right critique group. So I think that is awesome because the fact that you is now just to make sure I understand, it's different genres. So it could be middle grade, any of those kind of things, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, everybody in the community is working on something related to comics or graphic novels. So there are people who are doing books that are technically be called picture books, but they're doing it in comics format. Everybody is a graphic novelist. That's some of them are writers only, and some people are mostly artists. But I would probably say like 75%. Okay, I'm totally taking that number out of the hat, but more than 50% are author illustrators. So they're doing both.
Oh my goodness, that is amazing. There's not enough critique groups, and I think it's fantastic that you have one just solely for graphic novels. Obviously, we're talking about support, right? Critique and all that. What kind of support and connection do creators find inside that they might not find elsewhere?
Well, I think finding other people who are doing what they're doing, it is very lonely working as a comics creator or, any creative career. Well, okay, I think it depends on what type of creative pursuit it is because some things are more solo than others. Writing is a very solo endeavor, and illustrating is also a very solo endeavor. And so I think that there's a danger of burnout when you're working really hard over such a long period without having that daily give and take that people get when they go to the office, for example, or, if you have a job that does involve interacting with people. So I think that is part of why Case has been really successful for some people because it really gives them a place where they can vent to others who totally understand what it is they're going through. And I will also say, like, comics are truly insane. It's so much work. So if you think about it, comparing a picture book to a graphic novel, a picture book is 32 pages typically, and usually it's about one piece of art per page. So it's a total of 32 pages of art. Whereas a graphic novel could easily be 250 pages, and every page is 6 panels. So each panel essentially is its own tiny piece of art. So I don't know, you can do the math, but that is like a lot of individual pieces of art that have to be drawn. And usually it goes through multiple stages. There's the thumbnail stage, and then the penciling stage, and then the inking stage, and then the coloring stage, and then the lettering stage. So it just takes forever. I just have to bow down to because I'm not a graphic novelist. I'm an agent who works with graphic novelists. And there's a lot to my job that's challenging, but I think I think graphic novelists have an even more challenging job.
Yes, yes, I agree that I think it is important to have your people as creatives so that you don't get that burnout because we actually had a conversation with one of our guests that came on who is an illustrator and there is so much involved. You mentioned thumbnails. That's exactly how they start as for illustrators. And they also happen to work in that industry with comics and graphic design, graphic novels. So, yeah, I can't even imagine the work. It must be, like you said, it's so much. It's too much at that point. But going into that, you run the Kids Comics Studio, which offers workshops, mentorship, right? I think that's awesome. I think we all as creatives, we need a mentor. It helps us like, oh, let's work on this. How can we do better at this? What are some transformations that you've seen from participants?
Gosh, I wish you could ask them instead of asking me. I feel like it's better to get it straight from the horse's mouth. Again, I feel like even though I've created a community whose purpose is to help coach and support creatives, I almost feel like I've gotten more out of it than they have. I honestly feel that way. I'm just thinking of, so one member of our community, Patrick, I met him through the community maybe 4.5 years ago. And I've just seen him do so much. So he did his first Kickstarter. Gosh, I'm trying to remember the whole sequence. Think he did the Kids Comics Intensive course. And then as a result of that, he did a Kickstarter for his first book. And then because of that experience, he came and taught a workshop for us about his Kickstarter campaign, which was fantastic. And then the next year, he taught a longer, basically helped a small group of our members do their own crowdfunding campaigns. And now he's kind of working as a consultant on Kickstarter campaigns. So I've kind of like watched his new career blossom for him, because he used to be the graphic designer for a magazine called Kung Fu Magazine. And, the magazine industry has basically been decimated. So he lost his job through that. And now he's kind of going in a totally new direction. It's just so exciting. That's one example of one person. There's a guy named Trig Fast who took our Kids Comics Intensive a few years ago, and he got an agent, and then he got a book deal. There's another creator, Alondra Araujo, who got a book deal. And I could just keep going on. There's a lot of people I've watched, get an agent and a book deal. So I would say that's the biggest transformation. Alondra, who I just mentioned, is so cool because she leads a co-working session that she and my team member, Bailey, basically of their own accord decided like they were going to lead this co-working session, which happens every Monday evening. And it's just super cool because it's open to anybody. It's just, there's a recurring invite inside the community. Anybody can come. It's just quiet time to be together for a couple hours and just get your work done. But I've never actually been to these sessions because I think, well, I'm also busy, but they should be leading it themselves. But I do believe that they do a little shop talk besides just getting their work done.
Well, if I'm hearing reinventing is like a key word that all of the people involved, they're always finding ways to reinvent themselves and to grow. And through that, it's the transformation is part of it to make something in a positive way, to grow as a creative from the Kids Comic Unite. So you're creating that community of growth, innovation. I'm probably missing a word, but basically, yeah. But yeah, from that, you mentioned magazines and that that one of your creatives worked in that industry. From my understanding, that Kids Comics Unite also has a magazine, which is super cool. Can you tell us about the vision behind that, and what readers can expect from that?
Okay, it's not a magazine exactly. It's an anthology. So it'll be a book format, not magazine format. And we did do a Kickstarter campaign, and Patrick was the person in charge of our Kickstarter campaign, with a lot of help. Basically, I think we have 34 people involved in the project, and of those 34, 31 of them were either a writer or an artist involved in the stories that are compiled in the book. And we started this project in January of 2024. So we're now, where are we? July of 2025. We are putting the absolute final touches on the file that will be going to the printer. It's going to the printer probably within the next few weeks. And then once it's printed and shipped back, we will have it fulfilled to all our backers for the Kickstarter campaign, which also that was super exciting. I cannot remember what exactly our goal was, but it was something like $3,200 or something like that. And we basically tripled our goal with our backers. So it was 9,000 something in the end, what we raised for our campaign. So that was awesome. But it's such a learning process because we've been in the midst of finalizing our budget now. And we thought, whoa, we smashed our goal. We got more than $9,000 and we thought we needed 3,000 something. And well, now that we have paid Kickstarter's fees and we've set aside the money that we have to pay for taxes and we've tabulated all our close to final costs, we're like, whoa, we're just about going to break even. So it's not a bad thing. I mean, I think it's awesome. It's a learning experience, right? And at least we're not losing money. As long as we're not losing money, it's not a bad thing. So that's been really cool because actually somebody in the community just posted a couple days ago. She's a traditionally published author illustrator, but getting very frustrated with where things are right now with traditional publishing, and she's seriously considering self-publishing her next book. And so she was saying, like, I just want to know hard numbers. Like, how much does it cost, to do the whole thing from soup to nuts with um, printing a picture book or, whatever. And now I have hard numbers. So I was able to like answer her in the community and say, this is exactly how much we are spending on our printing. And it is, 176 pages, 4-color, paperback format. I didn't quite, I should have told her, what the jacket type is. But anyway, all those specs I can give it so that she now has a very solid sense of what we are spending. And then somebody else chimed in who actually just joined the community a week or two ago because I met this person at ALA, the ALA annual conference, and he has his own little micro press. It's called Comics Clubhouse. I think he's based in Pittsburgh. Anyway, and then he told her, this is how much I spend to print my comics. And his comics are really different than ours. They're 32 pages. And he prints them in the US, whereas we're printing in China because it is so expensive to print domestically. But anyway, so that way she could see the range. So anyway, those kinds of conversations are so valuable. And that's what I love seeing.
Oh my gosh, there's just so much.
I just want to take everything.
Yeah.
And almost say something about it. I just feel like we're so happy to have met you because you're saying a lot of things that Teresa and I say, and it's different hearing you, someone who's so experienced, talk about it, especially experienced not only in the business, but also talking to people who are trying to do their own startups and kind of make their own victories in this business. You're right. These conversations are so important. And it's funny because Teresa and I love to ask, we have a few small independent presses that we are interviewing, and we always come to the question, can you tell us about costs? Can you tell us about investment? Can you tell us about printing? Because we know that there are people who want to follow in those footsteps and make micro presses, whether it's just for themselves to self-publish or to help, creatives on the local level. So I'm so happy that you had some numbers to share. This is like revolutionary, really.
I know. And when you mentioned you're comparing from the other comic book company that they print in Pittsburgh, and then the fact that you print it through China, that gives it compare and contrast understanding. But there are, like Jackie said, there are so many people that want to break into the industry because you mentioned, and yes, you're right, that the traditional publishing is definitely going through a transition right now. So having that understanding of cost is so important. We always say that money is not a dirty word. It's something that needs to be said.
Yeah, I think that I admire the self-publishing world a lot because, well, to be honest, in order to, well, how should I put it? To stay afloat in self-publishing, you do have to be entrepreneurial. You can't be you can't be, I don't know how to say it. I feel like art and commerce are how they work together is really complicated. There is no right way to go about things. And I think people have to listen to their own heart and do what feels right to them. So I can get very enthusiastic about business because I work on the business side. And I love seeing people make a living from their work. So for that reason, I can be like, come on, guys, business is fun. You got this. But I do recognize that there are there are people who just really need to do their own thing, and making money is not what's most important to them. And that's so awesome because we need people in the world like that as well. So that's why I feel a little mixed, I guess, about the money issue.
I agree. I think maybe it's not mixed. It's just a really holistic and complete understanding of, like you said, the types of people in the world. And it was coming as someone who primarily worked in sales and publicity. I'm thinking about selling things a lot. And Teresa, unfortunately, gets the conversation that I say, which is, okay, let's try to think of ourselves, as a product. We have to think of it in terms of marketing to stay afloat, to be sustainable. But I learned along the way, just making friends with people and having conversations, that, yeah, not everybody is in it for the money. Some people are just in it for the fun, for the process, for the accomplishment and milestone that comes with writing or publishing a book, whether that's self-published or published through a traditional publisher. So it's just you grow and you learn. Your knowledge base expands, and being able to have a good conversation with each type of person, it can be hard. It's something that you have to learn how to do, and you might actually change from one type of person to the other over time. You know? Okay, I will take us on a different direction. So, we wanna talk a little bit more about you being an agent, because you agents are hard to pin down because you guys are so busy that we feel horrible reaching out to you, to be honest. We're like, "Oh my gosh, we're gonna overwhelm them. They have 8,000 submissions in their box, and then they have to read an email from us." Not cool. But could you enlighten us? How did you get from all that you did into agenting? What was that journey like?
Well, bottom line, like working with writers and artists. I like storytelling. I like shaping ideas, and I guess I like acting as a coach with creative people, kind of saying like, you know what, your strength is this, like go in this direction. Um, or maybe you're spinning your wheels a little bit over here. Things like that. I just love those conversations. And that's what I did when I was an editor. And I missed it so, so much. And when I was thinking to myself around 2018, 2019, like, okay, I want to get back into the industry, I did apply for a few jobs, but I'll be honest, probably a little half-heartedly because I didn't really think I could get a job easily having having left for such a long time. So I thought, well, what else could I do? And then, to be honest, the only thing that came to my mind was, I guess I'll be an agent. Now looking back, now that I started Kids Comics Unite and, knowing people like you who have a podcast, and I just feel like going back to what you said, Teresa, about reinvention, that the publishing industry is in the middle of a massive reinvention right now. And you really can craft your own career or your own thing that you do in a very specific way. But I wasn't thinking that way back in 2018, 2019. I just didn't have that vision. So literally, that was the only thing I could think of. So that's why I honestly did it. And I'll say the first couple years, I questioned my decision very, very regularly because it was so hard. It just felt like such an uphill struggle. Negotiating contracts is not my favorite thing to do, but it is a huge part of being an agent. And checking royalty statements is also not my favorite thing to do, but that's also very important. And just keeping records and so many aspects of it. You can probably tell I am a total like kid in the sandbox type of person. I am not like, let's cross all the T's and dot all the I's kind of person. But what I'll say, a couple things happened. Number one, I found people who could help me. So I have a fantastic contracts manager. Now they don't work for me full time. They're consultants, so I hire them when I need them. And it took me a long time, but I have finally found a fantastic accountant. I have an assistant, a virtual assistant, who She's like super detail oriented, so she, compliments me in that way. So that's the first part of what helped me. And then the second part, I like to talk about this because I think it's relevant to everybody. Anytime you try to do something new, in the beginning, sometimes it can feel like you're walking through quicksand. It's so hard. And I think about it a lot with marketing because a lot of authors and illustrators really hate the marketing part and like social media and stuff like that, which I don't like social media. But I just want to say to people, sometimes that feeling of discomfort that you have in the beginning is not necessarily an alarm bell saying like you shouldn't be doing this. It's just what happens when you're going through the early, really difficult uphill stage of learning. Learning can be really difficult. So I think I've gotten over that hump now. And it's not like it's like easy street, but I feel so much, it doesn't cause me as much anxiety and stress as it used to a few years ago. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Again, so many things. We're never going to catch up with everything that you say. I think Teresa and I are like both biting our tongues, like, yes. But I'll say one thing that I love that you said is just that recognition of discomfort. We have a phrase in my house, mental health house. Everybody works mental health but me. I'm just here. And we say seek discomfort because it's a sign of growth. And you'll know when it's the right discomfort and when it's a stressor that you shouldn't be putting yourself through. And I think it's so, so normal to continue to talk about being anxious and struggling in the position that you choose to grow in because everyone does it, right? I think, especially nowadays with social media and with working remotely, it's harder to connect. It's a lot harder to connect to your coworkers. So we really only see face on a meeting. We see assignments being done or not being done. We see success in pictures and we forget that people are probably having the same experiences as we are, whether right now or when they started as well. So I love that you brought that up. We need to keep bringing it up for every profession, not just this one, all of them.
I think it's really interesting to talk about is this idea that you can tell the difference between discomfort that's telling you like you shouldn't do this versus discomfort that comes from that inevitable struggle of learning something difficult. Because honestly, I really had a hard time telling the difference. There were periods a few years ago where I was like, maybe I need to throw in the towel on this. Like maybe this is just not for me. And now I'm so maybe that's just the nature of life, like things ebb and flow. Because now I'm like, okay, I like this actually. I like what I'm doing now. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. But if you had asked me this about it 2.5 years ago or 3 years ago, I would have said like I made a mistake. Well, of course I wouldn't have said it publicly.
You have a fun journey into agenting, and Teresa and I love to ask the question how you got to where you are. Of course, we've asked you that like 3 times already, but agent's extra mysterious for us. We have no idea what the line is to get there, and we keep trying to find out. We're like, okay, is it linear? Do you start here and then end up here? And you are the second agent we've spoken with. It's going to be 3 for this season, and each of you have a different story on how you got to becoming an agent. And it's so cool to hear that. I love the variety.
Well, one thing I will say is that I do feel like publishing is a business or a field that runs on apprenticeships. So even if they're not called apprenticeships, editorial assistants are essentially apprentices with editors. And I think it's exactly the same with agents. A lot of agents start as assistants to agents. And then there's also many people who were editors and then they switch over to becoming agents. So I think it would be very, very hard to just become an agent without having had some experience working in some part of the industry.
We spoke to one agent. She cracked me up. This was Elizabeth Teresa, that she did not think she was going to get into agenting, but she just found the job on Craigslist, and that's how she got there. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, wait, what? This was a while ago, though, right? Was it like 12 years ago?
I think it was 12 or
Right?
13 years ago
Right.
that she got her job and she started, as Jackie said, she looks on Craigslist.
She's so funny, yeah. Just out of the box.
And then she put that as a caveat, saying, don't wanna
Stay away
probably
from
not wanna
Craigslist,
do that
please.
now. Yeah.
It's so fun to hear. All right, we are coming up to a fun last question for Janna.
Your career is so fascinating and it's not as, one would think, obviously linear. It's not like that. It never works like that. I think this is life, right? But, as far as being that inspiration, because I think you are truly inspiring, um, what do you most hope your impact will be on the next generation of creators?
Well, I honestly have huge dreams. I think that our current economic system is very toxic, and I think that the people who will help us move into a hopefully more just and more humane society are artists and people who listen to their heart, writers, musicians, spiritual people of all types. So I guess with Kids Comics Unite and with my agency, I'm doing my tiny, tiny little bit to try to foster an ecosystem that is healthy.
Okay, that's amazing and definitely words to live by because we all need to do that little part. And we're all hoping that we're bringing a positive outlook for the future for all creatives of all types. And I love how you shared that.
Janna, thank you again for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure. You are one of these people that we hope that one day you'll come back to answer the rest of the really long list of questions we have for you. No pressure, but she said yes already. Done.
Well, once I start doing shop talk, it's hard to get me to stop.
We're happy to just let you go. Let you talk and just keep going and we'll be here like clapping on the side.
Well, to be honest, it has to be like ping pong, you know? Like I get energy from your enthusiasm, so I couldn't just talk all by myself.
You've been, again, so wonderful. And we like to tell our listeners at this point to please go to our website, thestorytellershelfpodcast.com, find the episodic calendar page, and click on Kids Comics Unite because that will take you to their landing page. And you can find all of the links that you can go visit and become a part of this. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and share this with a friend because we know that other people out there could use this too. And one last thing, if you like freebies, definitely join us in our email newsletter. Pop your email in, it's for free. We don't spam you, but we occasionally send things like career opportunities, awards and contests, and handy dandy things like pitch guides and query guides that you might find very useful. So otherwise, we will let you go today, and we'll see you again next time.